Hey everyone, I'm K.A. Will,
And I'm Gabby.
and this is another episode of Marriage Journey. Just to give you a little uh, background or give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about and why we call this Marriage Journey, we realize that everyone's marriage journey is unique, and everyone's marriage journey has its own culture. And we're not talking about culture as in, you know, your parents' background, where you come from, but culture as in creating a space in your home, creating an atmosphere in your home, your own culture, how you do things, how you raise your children, that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And this is our unique marriage journey that we're going to be sharing with you guys. And today we're going to actually, it's kind of like a continuation of the last episode, episode 3, where we started talking about triggers, right?
Yeah. In addition to knowing that everyone's journey is unique, but there are a lot of similarities and parallels. So our hope is that as we share, others can get some guidance or advice or ideas on how to navigate through marriage. So, but yeah, this episode is going to be on my triggers.
Yeah, and before we jump into that, I think what's so funny? Before we jump into that, I think it's important to mention that not only do we know everyone's marriage journey is unique, but also that it's okay to have faults in the marriage, like have things that you're working on. I mean, you'd be surprised that the same thing you and your spouse may be going through, your friends might be going through, or your family members might be going through. So that you don't feel like you're the only ones
Right.
trying to navigate, trying to figure out how do we get through this time?
Right.
How do we get through this issue that we're dealing with? Or is something wrong with us because we're dealing with this, that, or the other? It's perfectly normal. This is just life. So, but yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. So, talking about triggers, just quick recap. Last time I talked about one of my triggers, which is time, being late, and when other people just don't value your time. Because I'm one of those people that believe, there are a lot of things in this world that if you lose it, you can get it back. But time is not one of them.
Right.
Once your time is gone, it's gone. So, yeah, that was one of mine. So, what do you want to mention about one of your triggers?
So, just a disclaimer, we're not perfect. So clearly, this is something that we dealt with last week, or earlier this week, I should say. So, yeah, I hope that we prove to be transparent at least, and show, like he said, about the faults and things that we go through. All right. So last week we were watching Shark Tank, which is now one of our favorite shows. Because I really wasn't business savvy before. So I don't think I am now, but at least I'm trying to learn. And the investors, I figured when they put in money into the company, that's all they do, and they just wait for their money to be returned back to them. And Kareem said, "Oh yeah, but even though they have a percentage of the company and they put money in initially, they're still gonna continue to put money in to help the company grow." And I was like, "Wait, I thought it was just a one-time payment, one-time investment, and then you just pretty much wait for the company to grow so that you can get your returns." So I asked the question. I was like, "Wait, I thought, basically going through that and saying, I thought it was just one time. I didn't know they had to continue to give." And so Kareem gave his explanation and was trying to go through it too, because I was trying to be clear, because I said, "Oh wait, what about stocks? You give in an initial money and then you just wait for your money to return, twofold, threefold, or whatever." And finally, we got to the conclusion that private investment or ownership is different from public. kind of is that the gist
Yeah.
of it?
So basically, yeah, I was letting Gabby know that you can write up your contract or your investment, your agreement with that investor in different ways. So yeah, it could be a one-time thing, but you still expect them to help you manage or give advice, especially on Shark Tank. That's one of the reasons they go on the show, because they want them and their support
Right.
and their team
Right.
to help the entrepreneurs team. But yeah, it basically boiled down to we were having some type of miscommunication or misunderstanding when it came to privately owned companies and publicly owned companies. Because I don't know if you remember, but I said, okay, if you're going to talk about stocks, that's something totally different from
Right.
what they do on Shark Tank.
Right.
So
So I don't mind if I'm explaining something, asking questions and trying to get to the bottom, because if there's a miscommunication or I don't understand, I don't mind like butting in and saying, all right, well, what about this? What about that? Trying to be clear and see the differences. My beloved husband does not enjoy, let's say it that way, does not enjoy a back and forth. It's more of, okay, I'm going to try to be clear the first time so that we don't have to go back and forth and we can just hopefully be all on the same page. Is that fair to say?
I guess for the most part, because the reason why I say that, it's not that in this situation, let me talk about
Okay.
the example you used.
Okay.
So in this situation, talking about Shark Tank and investors, it's not that I mind the back and forth, it's that even your questions weren't making sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was saying. You were going from, because Shark Tank is about privately owned startups, entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So you were going from that to stocks, and I was trying to get you to understand those two are not the same. So you can't ask those type of questions. The same questions that apply for privately owned companies
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily apply for stocks and publicly owned companies.
Right.
So that's where I was getting frustrated, because I'm trying to get you to see that you're not talking about the same thing.
Right.
And I don't think you were getting that at first.
Correct. Right. That's
Okay.
why I kept asking the question, right? Like, it's understandable. My question didn't make sense to you because of your perspective, but from my perspective, I'm like, it's all the same thing. Investment. Again, not business savvy. I'm like, just investment. So then my boy was, his voice, the decibels in his voice was getting a little higher. Because he's passionate about the things that he knows, and he's passionate about clear communication. So I'm talking great things about you. I'm saying that from your perspective, it might seem maybe from the outside looking in that, oh, he's, I don't know, trying to take over, whatever. But from your perspective, I think, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, that you're passionate about what you do know and you know it well. And so you're like, okay, I can explain this fine in clear communication. I'm going to explain it, break it down as much as I can for the other person to understand.
Until you try to explain it to Gabby, then you feel like you don't know what you're talking about.
Let me finish. So yeah, the decibels started going up, and I was just like, and I started shutting down. I was like, okay, so, and there was another thing. He said, oh, well, if, you might have to do this research on your own, because, again, I need to break down like a elementary school kid. So yeah, so I was like, okay, so I'm good. So then he asked at the end, I hope you understood that. I said nothing. He said, did you understand? And I was like, sure. I was like, done talking about that. I'm not gonna be mad. I'm just gonna,
Oh my gosh.
I'm just gonna recede. So then now we were driving. Now we're at Sam's, and he says, what did you say? Did you say, are you okay, or did I make you mad, or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, you ready to talk about it now? Because again,
Talk
as we
about it
talked
again.
about in other episodes, conflict is not your best friend.
Right.
Dealing with conflict is not your best friend.
Right.
So I was like, you got time? You're okay? You're in the space to talk about it?
Right.
And so I told him it just felt like for me, from my perspective, he was overpowering because I'm trying to understand, and I might, not come with a rebuttal, but have a follow-up question to try to understand at a base level, at an elementary level. And I know that he doesn't like to do that, so then I have to cower down and just wait until he gets it all out, his system, his whole message, and then again, not that he doesn't like the back and forth, so I'm like, okay, sure, I understand. I'm just gonna research on my own, like you said before, research on my own. So why that was a trigger for me? So as we've talked about, I promise I'm not being cocky or anything, but I'm usually firstborn, a trailblazer. Parents immigrated from the Caribbean to give us a better life. Education level is not, past college, so, or up to college anyway. So I kind of had to figure things out on my own, had to figure out how to get through the education system in the U.S. So, I really couldn't rely on them that much. I'm sure my parents would give resources and make sure I got a tutor or something, but, couldn't rely on them. So I'm like I'm going to figure things out. And it's already hard for me to ask questions from other people. I'm like, I'll just figure it out, and then so that I can have intelligent questions. But yeah, so that was a trigger. Yeah, that was a trigger for me to ask, and then I felt like it wasn't my lack of understanding was not received well in a way to help me understand. And yeah, I'm prideful. A problem with authority, so it's a whole thing. But
can I say something before you move on? I know you have something. Remember your thought, please. But no, because I don't want you to forget.
Yeah.
You said something just now. Your lack of understanding wasn't received well. That is true. I need to work on that. Yeah. Because again, like you just said, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm explaining from, like you said, a basic knowledge as much as I can, trying to separate the two, public from private, so that you don't try to mix them together.
Right.
But it just seemed like you wanted to keep mixing them together. But you said it. You said your lack of understanding. I should have recognized or been more aware that, like you said, your understanding wasn't to the point where you would get that right the way I was saying it.
Right, exactly.
The way I was saying it. Because
Yeah.
I'm saying it from my point of view, not saying it from your point of view. So, yeah.
Now we're going into a different rabbit hole. So as we talk about lack of understanding and that being received and appreciated, and you come after it the right way.
Right.
Just remember when growing up, when you doing math problems and your parent is there with a belt. That was not received. You had to get the answer right.
Oh boy.
And if not, you got in trouble, right? So we're not really tolerant. Maybe that's the word. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Tolerant of people who don't have the same understanding as we do.
Right.
And I am guilty as well. I understand I'm guilty.
Yeah.
Man, that's a whole other thing. So, so yeah, and then back to the authority of like, oh, he's talking over me, or I have to be quiet. And we've been reading the Love and Respect book. It's a great book. We're
Great
kind of
book.
separately, but we've been
great book.
reading it, and I was on the chapter of authority. Like, guys, like authority, we're built to be leaders, and I'm like, I'm smart. I have a job. I rear children. Why can't I lead too? So that's been a push and pull for us for continuing on today. And it's been my question to God all the time. I'm like, why did you put it in your Bible, Father? Why did you put that in there? Why can't we be equal, right? I'm all for, we have the same skills, and I'm thinking in my mind anyway. And I realized, or one part of the book said, not allowing the fear of the husband being controlling or abusing that control keep you from allowing him to be the head of the household and the leader. And that struck a chord with me because the example of leadership in my home, I don't know what word to use, but not the best. And there's a lot of taking advantage of that authority, and so I'm like, subconsciously, unconsciously, I'm like, no one's gonna treat me like that. No one.
Right.
Not just you, no one.
Right. No, I get it.
And so him like talking like that, or decibels in the voice rising to a higher level, just remind me of that. And I was like, okay, wow, that's another trigger, and that's something that I need to understand. Like I said, hindsight's 2020, or rather 2021, start of the year 2020. It was his passion, like of explaining of the conversation we always have of him wanting to share wisdom, share, guide, lead, all of that. And I just need to give you that space to do that.
But can you imagine, guys? You hear Gabby talk about how she wants to lead and how she's firstborn, and she likes figuring out things by herself. And then you have me, who's also a leader. I had to figure things out on my own, but then trying to teach her. she doesn't want to be taught, even though she's asking questions.
That's what I thought you were going to say. That was a trigger for you. When we have the conversation, you're probably like, this girl, when she be asking me questions, she really don't want me to answer.
Right.
Doesn't receive it.
So it's just funny to me. You have to know yourself and know your spouse that way. Like we said, when it comes to conflict, when it comes to triggers, know yourself and how you handle them, and know your spouse and how they handle them, and just be aware of that.
Yeah.
Be very, very aware of that.
But how long we've been married and still learning.
Yeah, going on 8 years, and we are still learning each other. And I think, I know it's actually a strength, even though it doesn't feel like it. It's actually a strength when we have the conflict or have the triggers, and then work through it.
Yeah, it is.
Like, it's a strength. It makes you stronger. It doesn't. You're less of. I know for me, I'm less, less of apprehensive of trying to deal with it the next time it happens. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if something happens, or if you say something, or we get in a disagreement here, there, whatever, I'm less apprehensive because I know that we can work it out because we've done it before.
Yeah. So
that's encouraging to know.
Right.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to mention about your triggers?
I'll see a therapist soon.
I can't deal with you.
But I agree with you with when you go through hard times and come at the end, you're like, okay, wow, I can conquer the next challenge. And as we were able to say, to stop and just like be quiet and then come together when we were both ready, that was cool.
Yeah.
Because I'd be myself.
Well, that's it. So, guys, that's it. Again, this has been fun for us. We hope that this helps you guys dealing with conflict in your marriage, in your relationship, dealing with triggers, being aware of your triggers. And if you didn't watch the last episode, go back and watch that one, because that's really where we introduced this conversation, this topic. And this time we just got more into it and more on Gabby's side as well. So hope you guys enjoyed. Talk to you next time.